That's what we're going to be. I want you to keep that in mind as we're reading this and looking at it here and studying it a little bit, because there's a lot that goes on here that you really don't give it much thought as you read through this. But there's a lot that goes on. And we'll start out here in Genesis chapter 4, in verse 1. We read, it says, "And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord." Here we see that, this has come after Adam and Eve, after God has put them out of the garden. That's what I say. There's a time lag here. There's time that goes on. Now, they're out of the garden now. And so they come together and they conceive them a child. She bears the first son, Cain. And as the writer of our text puts it here, that's literally what it means in the Hebrew is, I have gotten the man. Okay? Now, Eve, no doubt, she's probably thinking that, what God has told her as far as being her seed going against the seed of Satan. She might think that this is going to be the one. And that's, she has named him in that vein, if you will. Now in verse 2, we see it says, "And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground." Now we see here that these first parents, Adam and Eve, they're getting them a family going here. And we see, here that the writer tells us that these first two boys, they have taken, if you will, their vocation. One of them's a farmer, and the other one's a herdsman. And we see that, he tells us there in verse 2 that Abel, the second one there, he's the herdsman. He's taking care of the sheep. Okay? And Cain, he's the farmer. He's the one that's tilling the soil. And both of those are good. Those are good vocations to have in that day and time, especially. Because it was all agricultural, and that's the God had nothing against either one of those vocations, and we'll see here that what happens is more or less the world system sliding in, coming in. And we're going to see here in verse 3, it says, "And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord." And here we see that, like I said, Cain, what he does is he grows the vegetables, and he's come. Now we see here that Cain mentioned here first, but they have, when I say they, Cain and Abel have grown up watching Adam their father. Now, they've watched him, as they have grown up, they have watched him serve God. They've watched him worship God. And we see here that Cain, he is bringing of the, if you will, as it says there, he brought the fruit of the ground for an offering unto the Lord. Now, as we know, you get into the Levitical law, which at this time is not in power. Right now, this is just the beginning, and Cain, he has done this. Like I said, you've got to remember, there's an extended period of time that's going on here. So no doubt Cain has been doing this. He's been bringing this offering unto the Lord for a while. Okay? But there's something that's going on here that's happening. It's happening to him. And, that's... we see that Cain, he's no doubt being influenced by something or by someone, and that is going to show here in these next couple of verses. In verse 4 and 5, he says, "And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock, and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. But unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell." Now we see Abel, he's the shepherd. Now he brings an offering. He brings an offering of his sheep. No doubt it was probably a young lamb, and he offered it in worship to God. And we know, you go right back to their mom and dad, and whenever they sinned, when they did what God told them not to do, God, they tried to cover their sin with fig leaves, if you remember. And what happened there, God, he had to go, he sacrificed an animal to make skins to cover their sin. And that right there was the beginning of the blood offering, if you will, to cover sins. And Abel, he continued that on. He brought a offering of the blood. We know, you get into the Word, and we see there that, Hebrews tells us that, there's no remission without the blood. Okay? And we see that for whatever reason, what we're looking at here, in verse 5, we see Cain. Cain, he gets mad because God doesn't respect his offering. And like I said, no doubt he has brought it many, many times in the past. And this time, God doesn't accept it. he doesn't respect it, okay? And according to what I've been reading and studying, one of the main reasons for it was why God didn't accept it was due to the fact of Cain's heart, because of the way he was bringing it. And like I said, we're seeing here that he has changed, no doubt, over the period of time in his heart and in his mind. And he is coming now with this offering, thinking that his works is good enough to cover that offering. And that's where we see, you can bring it right on down to today. We have so many different teachings that teach that, all you have to do is to be good. All you have to do is to give, help your fellow man, and do what you think is right, and that'll get you into heaven. It's works. But we can work 1,000,000 years in this life, and we're not going to be good enough. We can't work enough to earn our salvation. And that's what we see here. Cain, he thinks, evidently it has come to him that, he has grown these vegetables, this offering, and, it's what he's done, and God knows his heart. And because of that, God wouldn't accept it. And we see, just in there in verse 5, that his heart, Cain's heart, is not in the right place. It's not with God anymore. It's in him. Because he gets mad. And it says, that he got so mad and his countenance fell. He just had that old sour grape or that persimmon look on his face there. He took a bite and that was it, And God knew. God knew where he was at. God knew his heart. Just as he knows our heart. He knows each and every one of our hearts, our thoughts, everything that we think that we might be able to hide. We can't. Not from an all-knowing God. Now we see that Cain, he got really angry about the whole deal because God wouldn't accept his sacrifice. And God did accept Abel's sacrifice. And because of that, Cain got angry with Abel. He was mad. He was mad with Abel. He was mad with God. And we see that, he turned, if you will. He totally went against the Lord. And we see here in verses 6 and 7, even though God knew his heart, God knew where he was at, what he was thinking, he gives him the opportunity. He gives him an opportunity to turn, if you will. In verses 6 and 7 it says, And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? And why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And we see here, God is giving Cain the opportunity. Cain could have went and got him a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice, if you will, and he could have done just what he needed to do if he had had the right heart, if he'd had the right mind. But God, we know all through our life, I know myself, I can speak from personal experience, that God dealt with my heart for a long time before I ever made the change. Now he only had to do it one time. But he kept coming back. He kept coming back at me until finally I seen myself and where I was at. And this is what God has done for Cain. He's given him that opportunity. And then he is also warning him. He's telling him, you can do it. You can change. You can go. You can make that sacrifice, and all will be good. But then he tells him, but you can not do it. And when you don't do it, he tells him, sin lieth at the door. Now, according to what I've read and studied on this, what he means there when he says that sin is lying at the door, that word lieth in the Hebrew is crouches, like a wild animal, like that lion is crouching at the door. Now, God's given him the opportunity to turn that sin away. And, he tells him, you can do it if you want to. But if you don't, then you're going to fall into sin. Sin's going to take you over. It's going to do what it desires to do with you. And, sin is going to have his rule over Cain. And God, in all his, and all that he does for us, he gives us all, he gives everybody that opportunity to accept him, to come to him. And as we see here, like I said, these in this little bit of scripture we've looked at, we've seen just the same as what I said there earlier, the works salvation. And that's what Cain, he thought he could do. He could work his own salvation out. And God tells him, no, you can't. He tells him, if you try to do that, then sin's going to take you over. And that's what we see here. It's happened. Now, verse 8, it says, And Cain talked with Abel his brother. And it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. And we see here the first murder. This is murder in the first degree. This is premeditated. no doubt. Because like we said there a minute ago, Cain, he was angry at God, but not only at God, he was angry at Abel. He was jealous because God had accepted Abel's sacrifice. And we see that they're out in the field together, and tells us that Cain rose up against his younger brother and he killed him. And, that's, there we see just what God had warned him about. That sin, it crouched there at the door. And it was just like that old lion seeking whom he may devour. And we see the first murder occur here in the world. And, here we see the seed of the serpent rise up against the seed of the woman and strikes the first blow right there. Just as God had told Eve, that there would be a division. There would be a division of the serpent and the man, the seed of the serpent and the seed of the man. And here we see it. This is where we see the division. We see the division in the family come right here. We see, the children of God versus the children of the serpent. And, it carries, just as we seen there, we said back when Eve partook of that forbidden fruit, it was just like casting a stone out into a pond. And that ripple that just goes out. And here we see that ripple come right here to her sons. And Cain, he makes that ripple a little bit bigger, if you will. It's going a little bit farther. He has pushed it on out. And that we see that Cain, he's killed his brother just in cold blood. And, Adam and Eve, they didn't see it. They didn't know what had happened. Okay? But God knew. God saw it. And so there's no matter how much Cain wanted to hide it, he couldn't hide it. Because God had already told him. And we see here in verse 9, he says, "And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper?" Here we go. Trying to hide it. Trying to deny anything. Trying to deny any guilt at all. And like I said, God knew. God saw it. And here we see that, Cain, when God asks him about to where Abel is, he denies everything. He denies that he denies whether he knows where Abel is, and he just goes on. And where it says, when he said that, "Am I my brother's keeper?" He was saying, "Am I the keeper of the sheep?" Abel was the keeper of the sheep, okay? Now, Cain, he is right here denying, flat out denying, in the face of God, that he didn't know anything about anything. You know, he was pleading ignorance, if you will, and he was totally ignorant. In verse 10 he says, and he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. Now here we see God telling him. God's telling Cain, you're trying to deny something, and here the blood of your brother is crying out. That blood is a witness against Cain. It's also the prosecutor against Cain. You know, God tells him, hey, your brother's blood is crying out to me. I can hear it. You've killed him. And, you know, here we are. Cain, he's doing his best to go. He's trying his best to say he's innocent of anything, but he is totally guilty. And we see that God lets him know right there. He's saying, hey, your brother, his blood is crying out from the earth. The earth has already opened its mouth and taken up his blood. Now we see after this that God, he's going to put a judgment on Cain. Here in verses 11 and 12, it says, and now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And we see that God, he's doing judgment right now on Cain. And he's telling him, hey, you know, your brother's blood is at your hand. It's on your hands. And he puts this judgment, he puts a curse on him, really. He puts a mark on Cain. Now Cain, like we said, his trade is being a farmer. You know, he is growing the vegetables and the fruits of the earth. And Cain, here we see God tells him, says, no matter how much you try to grow, you're not going to be able to do much good at all, because God has cursed him. He says, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. Talking about the earth giving Cain a good harvest. He's never going to be able to have a good harvest anymore. And he tells him, God tells Cain, he's saying, hey, you're not going to be able to stick around long in any one place, because you're going to be a vagabond on this earth from now on. And, you know, that was a tough judgment for old Cain. And we see that Cain, here in verse 13 through 15, he's going to make an appeal if you will. It says there, starting in 13, it says, "And Cain said unto the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. And the Lord said unto him, Therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any find him should kill him. Finding him, lest any finding him should kill him." Now we see Cain making an appeal. But as you look at that, if you read it just a little bit and study it over just a hair and mull over it a little bit, you'll notice that he isn't seeking for any kind of confession. He's not got any kind of conviction as far as what he did. What he's worried about is what God has sentenced him to. He's not trying to ask for forgiveness. He's not seeking after God at all. He's just, if you will, for lack of better words, he's just whining and complaining about what God has laid upon him, the sentence that God had put on him. He has no remorse at all about what he's done, about killing his younger brother. There's no remorse there at all. He's just sorry because of what God has told him is going to transpire with the remainder of his life. And we see that God, even though he killed his own brother, he wants Cain to live with that mark that he puts on him. We see that he puts a curse on that mark, that if anybody was to kill Cain, if any of the other inhabitants, which you stop and think about it, all the other inhabitants at that time in the world were his brothers and sisters and his mom and dad. Okay? And you stop and think about it there. Like we said, there's a long period of time. No doubt Adam and Eve probably had 100 or more kids, if you think about it, over a period of 800-900 years. So that was that family right there. That was the beginning, and it just spread out. And so God put a curse on Cain and on anybody that would kill him. What that mark is, I really don't know. But no doubt there was something there that let the people, let everybody around him know whenever they come around him that there was something you don't want to hurt him. You don't want to bother him. Okay? And so God, he puts this curse on Cain. And we see here in verses 16 and 17, it says, "And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he builded a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. Now here we see, this is what happens to us, folks, when we're in sin. You get away from God. You move away from God. It's what Cain did. We see Cain, he left out. You know, he left from the face of God. He got away from God. That's what happens to us. When we're in sin, we're away from God. And we see that Nod, the meaning of it is wandering. So he's out in the land of wandering. Now he goes, and it says here that he builds a city. But you know, that doesn't mean that his wandering has stopped. Okay? He is there. He is done. God has done told him he's going to be a vagabond. He's going to just wander the earth all of his life. And just because he built that city, that doesn't mean that that wandering is over. You know, he built a city, but really, I don't think he built a home. He didn't build a place to stay. And you know, we see that he tells us there that he built that city and he named it after his son Enoch. And you know, we've all got to realize and understand in our day and time, in our lives right now, like we said, we can't work. We can't earn our salvation by what we do, by how we live, by how we treat our fellow man. That won't get us to heaven. And there's only one way to heaven. No matter what the world tells you today, you know, there's only one way. And that way is Jesus Christ. The blood that was shed on that cross, that work that he done on that cross. That's the only way that we can get away from sin. And God gives us all the opportunity, all the time. He'll deal with you to a point. So folks, you know, want to make sure that we're right with the Lord, that we've accepted Jesus Christ as our own personal Savior. Brother Jerry, would you close us in a word of prayer?